Dr. Johnson.
Call the meeting of City Council to order. Please remind everyone to turn off their cell phones or put them on mute. And I will do the same. Mr. McLemore has invited Mr. Johnson to offer our invocation. Would you please come forward?
Let us pray. Eternal Father, we thank Thee for this day. We ask now for Thy divine guidance into city business. Bless City Council, bless the citizens, bless us as we work together in an effort in peace and harmony and love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I will move that we amend the agenda to include an item to discuss the potential rate increases to the electric utility bills.
I have a motion to amend the agenda to add an agenda item which would come as number 4 under A, under new business. And the issue is to discuss
the potential increase to the electric utility rates.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion say aye. I'm sorry, discussion? None?
I personally think it's a little premature since we've directed city staff to come back to us with the plan and all the information needed. I think we'll just be rehashing what we hashed last week.
There's a motion.
Ms. Johnson?
I second the motion, but I do have concerns that we don't have sufficient information. We need to wait for the city manager to tell us whether there is going to be a recommendation of a rate increase. Is the city going to find a way to absorb it or what? So
Okay.
it's kind of premature.
Okay. Mr. McLemore?
Well, I made the motion on the table, and we had a second. I think we have a vote unless you're going into discussion.
Well, I'm just asking you, do you have any comment to make on that in the discussion phase?
I still think that we should discuss it because at the last meeting, it was expressed that it's urgency that we make moves immediately, and I'd like to know what moves have been made, if not to increase the rates. If we've made some moves since the last 2 weeks ago, then very well. But we had an emergency meeting with Ward 3, and I alerted the citizens of my ward and other Franklin Utility customers as to the fact that it was being considered that we would be having rate increases. So I think that we need to give clarification to these citizens that have come out tonight.
Okay. All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Nay?
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
And nay. Motion fails. We would like to see that the city council, that the staff come back with their responsibility. Now, it does not prevent people. Oh, there it is. It does not prevent people from speaking during citizens' time.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay. Yes.
Could we give, could I request that when we do decide to add this to the agenda for discussion, that we give at least one cycle, which is 2 weeks notice to the citizens so that they will have a reasonable opportunity to know that it's coming up? Because many of the citizens, as Councilman Burgess expressed, this is an emergency. We got hit by the bus. So we were under the impression that it would be acted upon tonight. So can we give these people...
We were led to believe it would be acted upon tonight?
That we were, no, let me state that accurately. We were led to believe that it was urgent that we moved quickly to stop the bleeding, as y'all put it.
Correct.
So, quickly was 2 weeks ago. So, I'm assuming within 2 weeks, we would have been ready to discuss what we were going to do to stop the bleeding.
And I think we were told by the city manager that it would take a while for them to put together a response to that, and it will be quickly, but it won't be imminent. So I think we can accommodate that by giving advance notice when he sees that it's possible to schedule it 2 weeks out. Mr. Martin, do you think that can be publicized enough?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I think also we said that I believe the rate increase is going to be a part of the normal budget cycle. So there'll be lots of opportunities for people. It's not going to be anything that we're going to pass and it's going to be done next week. It's going to be a part of the normal budget cycle, which would take effect sometime in July if it was to be passed.
Okay.
So it's, I mean,
But
it's
there
not
will-
anything we're doing right. That's not a part of the emergency measures that we were discussing the last meeting, because there's a whole long list of protocols that have to go through to make a rate increase. What we were looking at are things that can be done immediately that staff can do on not spending money and changing some funding priorities inside the electric department, not rate increases.
I'm aware of what we discussed at the last meeting, and it was expressed, and the DVD would reflect it, that there was urgency placed on this, and we even saying we're not going to vote on it tonight at the last meeting. So if you weren't going to vote on it at the last meeting, you would think that it was possible that we would be considering a vote at this meeting.
Well, was it on the agenda that we ever got on Wednesday?
No.
No, it was
No.
not. So it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda.
That's correct. So there will be no action on it tonight.
Okay.
Okay. However, Mr. Martin has agreed to give as much advance notice when it will go on the agenda as he can possibly do.
Yeah, I would presume it would be feasible unless something I'm not aware of, that we would announce it at one meeting for the next meeting.
For the next,
Mr. Williams?
A rate increase requires by law a public hearing
Correct.
with 2 weeks' notice printed in the newspaper. So certainly, you're going to have at least 2 weeks' notice in the newspaper that there will be a public hearing that would potentially lead to a rate increase.
Gotcha.
and just for clarification of the citizens that have come out with concerns regarding the utility bills, I'd like to thank Mr. Martin for taking time to come into the Ward 3 meeting that was held at the Workforce Development Center Thursday night. Thank you, Mr. Martin. And at that time, we could have informed the citizens that it would not be discussed at this meeting. So someone very well could have made an amendment at this meeting, regardless of if it was on the agenda, to discuss it. So the citizens are prepared to hear how this body feels about it and express their concerns regarding it. But since it's not on the agenda, they couldn't sign up for that agenda item. But I want to thank the citizens for coming out, taking their time and effort to express their concerns. And
Thank you, Mr. McMore. Minutes of the previous meeting of March the 12th and December the 19th meeting? Why December the 19th? Is there a correction to that?
That was a closed session on personnel that the board did not adopt, the open session aspect.
Okay.
It's a one-sheeter, it's before you, set the paper.
Okay, may I have them,
Was it at our seat?
Yes. I think it was emailed out Friday as well, but
they were at our seats.
it's a one-sheeter that's your seat.
This is them right here, right?
It's not there.
I don't know.
These are the minutes. Oh, not December 9th.
Yeah, it was sent separately from the agenda. I thought another copy was before you, but I apologize for that. It's a one-pager, basically, that you went into closed session and came out, took no action. If you need to see it.
if that needs to be done, could you circulate that for the next meeting? So now, as far as the minutes are concerned, we're dealing with the minutes of March 12th. Are there any corrections to those minutes?
I don't know if you would consider it a correction, the way this body feels about it, but on page 2, Under citizens' time, it reflects that Ms. Effie King of Pine Street, Ms. King stated that she appreciates City Council. She also states that she wanted to thank Vice Mayor Johnson, representing Ward 4, Councilwoman Hilliard, representing Ward 5, and Councilwoman Rosa Lawrence, representing Ward 3, for forums conducted in the city of Franklin. Ms. King suggested that other wards might also find it beneficial to conduct forums. I think that, did we leave out what type of forums that were discussed? Did she want it discussed? I didn't see.
We didn't state it, so we can't put it in there. Right.
Okay.
Any other corrections to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Motion, there's a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Abstained is absent.
And aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We have 3 persons who signed up to speak for citizens' time. The first is Dr. Linwood Johnson.
To Mayor Council, Vice Mayor Johnson, to the members of City Council, to Mr. Martin, City Manager, to Mr. Taylor, Williams, City Attorney, good evening on this nice spring evening. I'm before you to discuss job development, which is a very important issue in the city of Franklin. We have a petition that we're circulating, and many people are signing it for job awareness. We need jobs in the city. I know some agencies have worked on trying to develop jobs, but we don't have jobs yet. So we are driving force to make sure that this happens, that we have jobs in the city of Franklin for the citizens. It's very important to have jobs because we have high rates and many bills that are coming before us. So jobs are very important, and we need jobs in the city of Franklin. That's a desperate issue because the unemployment rate is in the double digits today. And we understand that people need to live, but we need money in order to survive. So it's very important that we take this and move forward with it as a driving force to do not stop until it happens for our citizens in the city of Franklin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Was proposed to you to have this discussion added to the agenda to discuss this job issue?
Are you asking me?
Yes, because I was told by Mr. Johnson, I believe, that he had requested that this be put on the agenda so that we, as a council, can discuss what we're doing, and perhaps it would have included, I don't know, FSCDI or whoever's supposed to be helping us get jobs. But was it requested that it be
He
on the
asked me
agenda?
earlier on, and I did not give him a commitment because we talked to, I didn't put it on the agenda and it was not amended tonight to add it, but it can be put on a future agenda. If anyone chooses to do so, let me know. It can be added to an agenda in the future.
Well, I can let you know now, I'd like it put on the agenda to see.
Would you get in touch with me and be pretty specific about what you want on the agenda?
A discussion
At
as
another
to
time.
what we as a body are doing to ensure that we are trying our very best to secure employment opportunities to come to Franklin.
If you will, I need to have that in the form of agenda item. If you'll send me that,
Yes.
I will forward that to Mr. Martin. Next person who signed up is Teresa Parker.
Evening, guys.
Greetings.
The reason I had come tonight was I wanted to keep the light at a 2.5 if possible, because my light bill runs very high. Even though I get paid twice every 2 weeks, my light bill is my whole paycheck. And just no way I can do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's she live?
303 North High. Her address is 303 North High Street. Mr. Herman Parker?
Yes, sir. I believe the nails...
Could you state your name and address, please, for the
Yes,
record?
sir. My name's Herman Parker. I live on 303 North High Street, Franklin, Virginia. I believe that if we need the money and we need to raise these lights and stuff, we shouldn't. We should have like fundraisers that the city can represent, just like the Southampton County has county fairs to make their money, and the citizens don't seem to be hurting on that. And to make that's just close that story out, a fundraiser would seem like an excellent idea. And I'd also like to close that about the jobs that's been brought up. Some people won't allow us to have jobs because of their own setting situation. And I just thank y'all for your time. Y'all have a blessed one.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes our citizen time. The next item on our agenda is the financial matters. Ms. Rollins?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Vice Mayor Johnson, other council members, Mr. Martin, Mr. Williams. Good evening to the citizens. Before you this evening, you do have your February financial report. As you are aware, March 31st, 2012 will mark the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year. At the particular time, I would like to present council with an in-depth report as to the financials for the month of March. Since you do have February this evening, if you have any specific questions, I'll try to answer them. But again, do know that at the end of the third quarter, we will be providing a more detailed analysis of the financials at that time.
And would that normally be during one of the meetings in April?
Yes.
Okay. Is that be the first or the second? Usually the second?
The second meeting.
Okay. Do you want to make any presentation or call our attention to anything specifically, or just entertain questions?
We can just entertain questions. Some of this was already presented when we did the January financial report, so of course some of it will be redundant information. So I was hoping to entertain questions. Again, if there is something specific, I'd be more than happy to try to answer it.
From your perspective, without going through all of this, are we kind of on schedule and on budget?
Well, if we want to briefly take a look at our local property taxes, general taxes, and so forth, I do believe that we'll be pretty much on target with that. There are one or two areas where we probably will experience a shortfall, but hopefully the collection side will hopefully make up for that deficit. Some of the areas that we probably see a little bit less in, the budget was actually increased this year. I'm not sure exactly why that was increased. So I think the collections that we will get this year would be more in line to what our actual projections would be for next year. But other than that, I think we'll be pretty in line in terms of a lot of our local revenues. As I brought to council's attention at one previous meeting, there are some items in which we're going to have to come back to council to have addressed in terms of some items that were not in the budget, in terms of some over expenditures in terms of, for an example, I give you one, for the payment to Southampton County. We budgeted $600,000 for that payment. This particular fiscal year, that payment would be $677,000. So that's just one item. So again, once we look at March, we'll be able to determine exactly where we are at the end of March, exactly what we project all of our revenues to be at the end of the fiscal year, and we'll try to do the same for the expenditures so we can have a better report to council as to what we think will be at the end of the fiscal year.
On that particular item, the revenue that we share with Southampton County is usually based on collections.
Correct.
So would that not mean that our collections were up that would offset that?
No, you're speaking of the payment that we're
Right.
making to that?
Right.
No, that was an actual budgeted item. The amount that was in the budget was $600,000, but we're going to end up paying more than that.
But it's my understanding, and I maybe need to be corrected, but it was my understanding that the budgeted item that was, the The projected budgeted item to Southampton was based on a projected budgeted revenue, because they revenue share with us.
Right.
And so whether or not, because the fixed cost is very dependable, but the variable cost is how much income comes in.
That's right.
And it's my understanding that, I'm hoping that you'll see an actual increase in revenue that would be offset to that 77,000.
And that would be less certain expenses as well, that
Right.
would take off that revenue as to what our payment.
Because that's how it usually works, it's gross receipts minus expenses, and then we revenue share.
What's
the
left?
difference.
It's a very, and I think she worked through it last year some. It's a real involved formula, I think, that
It
they have to
is,
go
it
through.
really is. And it's always 1 year behind, so the information that we're looking at to come up with that payment for this year is based on fiscal year 11 data. So again, but I'll certainly take a look at that and
I'm
address
hoping that you'll
council.
find that you'll have additional revenue that offsets
Okay,
that.
okay, hopefully
Question,
so.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. McNamore, you have a question?
Yes, I just want a little more clarification. The revenue sharing, and it may be redundant, our revenue sharing is something that we have, like a fiduciary tax, we've collected that money already that we're supposed to be sharing, correct?
I don't believe that it works that way. I mean, yes, we do, of course, collect the revenues, and of course, as Councilman Cheatham alluded to, there are several items that go into calculating that particular formula. So not only are we looking at the revenues, we're looking at certain expenditures, and there are percentages of those expenditures that we look at. So in all, with that calculation, of course, we're looking at, again, all the expenditures for different departments. There's a certain percentage of those expenditures per the formula that has been revised to come up with that payment. I don't know all the intricate details regarding it. I can of course, provide you that information at a later meeting. But I was only didn't want to get into the details regarding that revenue sharing payment. I was only trying to use that as an example as to where I'm thinking we might have to come to council and request some additional funding.
Okay.
That was just one. In retrospect, with a different example, probably would have been a better one, was in terms of our share of our inmate costs, for an example, our juvenile detention. That is another one, in whereby we budget a certain amount, and due to unforeseen circumstances or due to the number of kids that we have in the system, we're going to have to end up paying more for that. That's just a second example, and I can give you a few others. But
That's
again,
one we don't have any control over.
that's
because
right,
that's
absolutely. So again, maybe I could have used a better example, but again, I was just trying to let you know that there were some things that are outstanding.
I'm glad you brought that example up, because I liked clarification. There aren't any, what could be circumstances that would cause us to have to pay more than we've collected since it's sharing. So under all circumstances, it should be pretty much a pass-through amount of money, so that we don't go in debt unless it's for like administrative costs or things like that.
I think what she'd like to do is to come back with details at the next meeting, so she can be specific. I think we asked her a question that deserves some research.
Okay.
Is that fair, Ms. Rollins?
Yes, I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I always look at the cigarette, lodging, and meals tax,
Yes.
and it looked to me like, when I looked through it the first time, that we're probably running a little behind in some of those.
Well, I can give you a little bit more details with that, Mayor. For our restaurant meals taxes, I think we're in line as where we were last year at this particular time, and that was one of them. As you can see, the actual budget was increased from $1,155,000 last year to $1.3 million this year. I do not know the reason why that particular item was increased. However, that is one that I have identified that may fall slightly below at the end of the fiscal year. I'm thinking right now around $50,000, but again, I'll be able to have a better analysis at the end of March. For our local sales tax, I think that the city would be right on target with what the projection is there. As you can see, the receipts that are shown at February 29th, $817,000, actually represents 6 months of collection for our sales tax, so I believe that we'll be on target with that particular item. For our lodging taxes, I do believe also that revenue item was also increased from $130,000 last year to $150,000 this year. I think we may fall a little slightly below in terms of our lodging taxes. I do believe for our cigarette taxes, we will be on target for our cigarette taxes. And those are a few, of course, that you asked about. Did I miss one in particular? I can try to address that one. In the analysis that has been done so far, just for the local taxes, I've indicated that probably we will come in about $100,000 less overall in our local taxes. Now, in our other local taxes. However, if you take a look at the general property taxes, you can see that the city's doing pretty well in terms of where we were last year, in terms of where the city is this year with the general property taxes. As you're aware, with our collection efforts by our treasurer, as you can see that our property taxes, again, 91% collected at this particular time. Our real estate taxes, 47% right on target. And of course, our real estate taxes for our delinquencies, we did budget $100,000 this year, but already through the end of February, we've collected over $200,000 for that tax. So I'm hoping again that the excess in revenue for the personal property taxes will of course mitigate the losses that we may experience with our other local taxes.
So we'll look forward to a good third quarter report.
I'm hoping so.
Good. Any other, Ben?
Yeah. Ms. Rollins, on the sales tax, are we running a month behind on that line item?
On our sales taxes, they run 2 months behind.
2 months behind.
2 months behind on sales taxes.
Is there some way that you can, based on our other taxes, that you might be able to project that for this March report that you're going to do as to where we think we're going to be?
I can certainly do that. I have what we've collected so far, and again, what we expect to receive the next, in this case, it will be 5 months out. So we can have a true 12-month picture of our sales taxes. Yes, sir.
Good.
And there's several other accounts that are kind of like that, where we
Yes.
run a little bit behind.
Right.
You'll try to get us a
Yes.
good, clean picture of
Yes,
where we are.
do. The communication tax runs 1 month, the sales tax 2 months, there's another one that runs 1 month behind. So it makes it a little difficult in terms of trying to do the reporting, but again, I think that you'll find, once we get through this year and next year, and we did go back and make the accrual adjustments, we did, for at least the local taxes, so we are comparing the same data. But again, yes, sir, we'll make sure that we have that information for you.
How do you make up, if you're 2 months behind, how do you balance that out on June 30th? How do you true up the numbers?
In July.
No. I'm sorry. Technically, you
I was
don't.
looking at our CPA.
Your books kind of remain
The audit
open.
will-
Right,
the
the
audit
audit
will-
will adjust it. Right. By the time August rolls around, we'll get
It'll be actual by then.
August. Actually, for sales taxes, is September.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but again, some of them it is August.
So
But again,
September, you'll actually know through June 30th.
That's right, absolutely.
What's the delay in that? Is it
It's
state?
just the way that the state submits the payments to localities.
Okay, so it's really the state collection and refund to us.
That's right,
There's
absolutely.
the delay.
Yeah, the distribution process typically will take 60 to 90 days.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons we have to be as conservative as we are in projections and budgeting, so you don't miss the target. It's very difficult, because some of these numbers you're projecting 15 months in advance.
Mhm. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Under water and sewer fund transfers, use of prior year fund balance, it was budgeted $537,000 with no actual this year, and only $65,000 last year with no actual this time last year. Is that to say that we had more in the fund balance?
No, what that number is, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because again, what we will actually change that particular terminology, but what that $537,000 is, Councilman Johnson, is an actual amendment that was done to the particular budget this year. It was like your carryover. So that's what that $537,000 represents. At the next report at your March meeting, I will go ahead and identify exactly the correct terminology for that particular line item, and I share with you also, again, the reasons for that particular budget amendment.
Typically, what would happen is you have items at the end of the budget year that were anticipated to be completed that are carried over, and since you didn't have the expenditure, you carry over the reserve funds that were created as a result of that carryover. Did I get that right, Melissa?
That is correct, sir, yes.
It was just a big difference between last year's and this year's.
Was that going to net us a surplus at the end of the year because the projects didn't materialize? Or is it a project still on the board that just hadn't
No,
gotten done?
it was a surplus as of last June 30th.
As of last
And that's why it's added back in.
It's been,
The obligation was still there, but we just had not completed it and expended the funds.
so you haven't
So it's
completed
a
the
net of
project.
zero, yeah. It's a
So you
net of zero.
don't book it to that until the project's completed?
Well, at the end of June, everything expires, so you have to reappropriate.
Reappropriate it.
Missing my point.
The end of
Is
this
that
June.
money, is that money committed to a project?
Yes.
That
Yes,
is
it is.
incomplete?
Yes.
That's all I want.
Now, at the end of this June, hopefully it'll be complete,
Right.
and then you
And
won't
if
have
it
to
isn't,
carry
you
it.
reappropriate it to the completion of a project. Okay.
Can I,
Question?
Come back with the, explanation next.
Mr.
I
McElroy?
was just wondering, what project is that allocated to go to?
I believe a water line extension project, but if I may defer the question to staff present who may be able to better answer that question, Mayor Council.
Mr. Pace is back there. Russ?
That was for the slip lining project that spanned 2 budget cycles, that's why you had that carryover.
What is the slip lining project?
Rehabilitation of gravity sewer system. Placing liners inside old clay pipes, pipes that are 50 to 75, 80 years old.
Is that for a specific area or the entire city?
It was, well, we're going to be working in the entire city over the years, but this was in an area that we had done flow testing that demonstrated we had the highest infiltration.
What area was that?
Robin Hood Road, Cypress Avenue, North Drive, Crescent Drive, Sunset Avenue,
On the north side,
a little bit,
mostly the north side?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And basically what happens if you don't repair this, we're treating groundwater and surface water, and that has a cost associated
I
with it. So
understand.
the more of this we can eliminate, the more capacity we have for future growth, as well as to prevent that water from infiltrating the system and using the chemicals to treat it.
I understand.
Okay. Any other questions of Ms. Rollins? Okay, next item?
Is the next item the VRS legislation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry. May I ask the city manager, Mr. Martin? Okay, are we proceeding as discussed with this item? Okay. All
Yes.
right. All right. The VRS legislation, I'm sure council members, excuse me, that you've heard by now the recent legislation, excuse me, regarding the Virginia retirement system. Senate Bill 497 was passed by the House and the Senate recently at the last session of the General Assembly. And of course, a summary of the bill is highlighted for you on the left side there. Basically, the bill requires that local government employees pay the 5% employee contribution to the Virginia retirement system effective July 1, 2012. Alongside that particular piece of legislation, it requires that local governments also increase the credible compensation for employees by 5% in return. In other words, they're mandating that localities increase employees' compensation by 5% in order to accommodate that particular increase. Also, the Virginia retirement system rates for the city of Franklin will increase effective July 1, 2012, from 15.48% to 19.28%. And of course, it is outside the legislation that's already been approved. But basically, we just wanted to show you this evening the full impact of the all of the VRS legislation that's impacting the city this particular fiscal year, next fiscal year. And of course, as I alluded to, there will be an impact to the employee and the employer. In other words, the employee's take-home pay would decrease unless the locality increases the pay beyond 5% to cover the increase in the payroll taxes. In other words, even though you may increase the employee's salary by 5%, there are also certain areas in terms of the taxes and so forth that would not be covered if you just really increase the pay by only 5%. So there is a extra percentage that would be required in order that employees would not lose any take-home pay, any gross pay. The cost to the employer would increase to cover the employee's higher payroll taxes. This would make the employee impact neutral, as I just stated, and basically, again, no impact to the employee's pay. On the right side, we want to go ahead and show you the actual effect in terms of the actual dollars. In terms of the compensation there, we've indicated that The salary increase that would be needed to make that employee impact neutral would not be 5%, but it would be estimated at 5.2631%. And that, of course, if the city elected to make the employee neutral, that cost to the city would be $18,169. Okay? And basically, the figure at the bottom was was put there to kind of show you, of course, what we are currently in fiscal year 2012 with the salaries, with the VRS contributions, and in terms of actually increasing the salaries by 5.2631%, and of course, that's a long number, I did not round, but in essence, it shows you that the revised salaries of that $7.2 million, $7,267,780 is pretty much in line with the salaries in the current fiscal year. On page 2 of the information that you have before you,
I don't have the report.
I didn't see that. I can't follow this.
Came through email, yeah.
Came through the email?
Email.
Before we go on, I have one question. Are we on discussing the annual health plan renewal?
Yes, sir, that's next. That's the next item. It got skipped over.
It got skipped over.
It got skipped over.
and perhaps maybe that was my question, I'm sorry for the beginning. That's why I alluded to Mr. Martin as if I was
No, that's
discussing this
fine.
item.
I
I
mean,
didn't
why
have
you
the
did,
agenda
that's
in front of me. I
No,
do
that's fine.
apologize.
We're going back to that.
Okay. I was thinking it was the health insurance, and I know I wasn't presenting
No,
that
that's
item.
fine.
Okay.
We'll go back to that.
Okay.
I just don't have the document that you're talking about.
It was,
I can continue, Mayor Council?
Yes,
Or we
please.
are waiting, okay. In essence, the impact of the VRS legislation in terms of the actual rate increase, as I indicated earlier, the city's rate will increase from 15.98% to 19.28%. There is an impact because of that particular rate increase. However, we do understand that when the employee contributes to 5%, the rate that the city will be paying is actually 14.48%. So again, the cost to the city for the VRS rate increase is $291,728. That again is the rate increase from the 15.90% that the city currently pays, plus the impact relative to increasing that rate to 19.28%. In addition, if the city elects to keep the employee salary neutral, that cost would be $18,169, which leaves, of course, a total impact of both VRS legislation pieces to the city, $309,898.
And we have no choice, because it's a state unfunded mandate.
It is a state unfunded mandate, yes.
But the reason we bring it is, and you have an example of a letter from Suffolk in there that they wrote, we're being urged by the Municipal League as well as other agencies, School Board Association and others, to write a letter to the governor who has the ability to make adjustments to this or require legislative review. And I would recommend that we similarly write a letter of concern and objection to this unfunded mandate and send that to the governor and hope that he will make adjustments. Or send it back to the General Assembly for further
Do we need a
review.
motion to have the...
Yes, I'd like a motion.
I'd like to move to have the city manager write a letter to the governor,
Similar to the one from Suffolk.
similar to one from Suffolk, yes.
So moved.
Motion is a second. I guess that's a second. Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. And aye. Motion carries.
Before we leave, can I ask a
Yes,
question?
please.
Is the 5% that the employees are going to contribute required or optional?
No, it's
It's
required.
mandated. It is mandated, yes.
We have to pay the 5%.
But the employee will have to pay 5%, and this is an effort, as I understand it, that the General Assembly wants to put local employees on par with state employees, as I understand.
Well, I think they're trying to get back to the way it was many years ago, where they went without a raise, and instead they picked up the retirement.
One
Yeah, I'm trying to go
downside for
back
them, you're exactly right, and one downside for this to the employees, Ms. Rollins' recommendation or report shows you the impact on city cost.
Yep.
But it also highlights that employees will see a cost because they're gonna have to pay tax unless there's some pre-tax effort or something on this new income. So they're gonna have less take-home pay as a result of this.
It's a mess. They messed it up really badly.
So,
Years ago.
look, in layman's language, so I'll understand. Now, they're passing on this unfunded mandate saying that we have to give this increase to the employees, which the employees are gonna have to pay, and we're gonna have to match. The city's gonna have to match.
Well, actually, the city's rate for that change would stay the same, but we're gonna have to pay FICA and other taxes on what we're paying them. So that's gonna increase our cost, as well as the
As theirs.
employee will be taxed in their income for it.
And then we take out that 5% and send it to the state.
Right.
It doesn't come out pre-tax? I know it doesn't come out Social Security, but it doesn't come out income?
That's one of the debates that they're having, is whether it will be pre-tax. It's not
That's right.
clear
They haven't
in the
decided
legislation.
yet.
Oh, I thought all
It
retirement was...
should be come out pre-tax.
I'm sorry?
It should come out pre-tax.
I would think so.
It's in the
Yeah.
Security.
One would think it would, but it's still gonna be subject to
Still going to
FICA.
be subject to FICA.
But that's,
This
that's
was
part
done
of
on
the
a
debate.
Saturday, right before they adjourned. So
Yeah.
it's
On
not
late
been-
Saturday.
Doing mischief.
Hasn't been well vetted, and a lot of questions remain.
Well, the opportunity, according to VML and VACO, is for us to respond as has Suffolk and try to ask the governor to do an amendment to that bill to try to clarify that and to make it easier on the locality. Because it's really a gouge to the localities.
Now-
And you're talking about Virginia Beach, you're talking about millions of dollars.
But also, we are shared in this, the rate is going up, period. So we're
Yep.
gonna see a substantial impact on our budget, whether this legislation.
And that's to cover the cost of poor performance and a fixed contribution, a fixed benefit plan.
That's part of it.
Is there any, which I don't think it is, but somebody may know something I don't know. Is there anything we can do short of write a, please don't do this letter?
It's generally something mandated.
So could we petition our General Assembly representatives, being our delegates and our senators, don't you think maybe we should be sending letters to them?
That's the purpose of this letter.
We will
To go to the
copy it
governor
to
and
the
copy them.
delegation, yes. But they've already acted and approved it unless they
It's too late.
reopen it, you know, it's.
The only recourse now is for the governor to amend it and send it back for reconsideration.
I
It's been
feel,
passed by both houses.
I feel like, got hit by a bus, to use your phrase. When things like this are coming down the pipe, introduced, we should be able to be proactive, and then we can have some influence on the way our representatives who are charged to represent us react something in Richmond. And I'd like to know how our representatives voted regarding this issue.
But you can find out. You can go online and find out exactly. Look up
I
the
know.
bill, you can tell.
But we would have liked to have been proactive, but no one knew it was happening, not even our lobbyist organization, if you will, the municipal league, they were caught off guard with this one. It was-
Yeah, one would think they'd do something with this big of an, phase it in instead of one time.
And that's one of the discussions, is phasing in this changeover on the employees, but that still is gonna have the same result over a period of years.
Over a period of
As I
years,
understand it, they did that on the school system, 1% a year for 5 years, and the governor, I think, has been simply at least extending that part to local government. And again, that would help us, but that's not going to fix the increased amount of money we're gonna have to
Over
pay.
a long period of time, it doesn't, but it helps in the short term to take a little of the pain out of it.
Well, at this point, we have no choice other than to petition the governor for an amendment. And that's what we can do. Based on your motion, we can do that.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Lott.
I think that's a little confusion here too, to all localities. The letter that was sent by VML to the office of the governor, and that was signed by James D. Campbell, Executive Director of Virginia Association of Counties.
Right.
Alfred R. Butler, Executive Director,
Yep.
Virginia Association of School Superintendents, and
Yep.
R. Michael Amix
Amix.
of Virginia Municipal League, and Barbara Cole,
Nope.
Virginia's
She was
School Board
copied.
Association. But look, the
No
thing
choice.
that caught my eye in this letter was, First, we asked that you place a reenactment clause on the bill. It was not at all clear going into the final day of the session that any action would be taken on this bill, and the 579 political subdivisions affected by Senate Bill 497 did not have the opportunity to educate their legislators on the effects of this legislation. And so it appears to me that, I hate to use the word fast track, but that seems like what happened here.
You're probably exactly right. And that's what the argument is all about. That's why these letters are critical, come from every municipality.
You witnessed it. In Richmond, they do that.
Okay. And everyone is weighing in on it and feels the same way. So it depends on each municipal. We've already authorized the amendment, so, I mean, the letter, so that's the recourse. It's the only recourse we have, is to hope we can get a favorable ear from the governor.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I want to go back to my 5% question again. I didn't really get a chance to finish. In the prior years before, when this all came about because of a lack of a pay raise, was it a mandatory 5% back then, or was it optional?
It was mandatory.
So it's always been mandatory.
It was mandatory to be paid. Municipalities chose to pay it for the employees and at whatever
That's
period
what
of
happened.
time.
They followed what the state did, I think. The state did it, and then they followed suit, if I'm not mistaken.
That's where it came.
Does the state mandate what we have to set for rates for employees?
For what?
For retirement?
Not for retirement, for salaries.
No,
No.
But they set it for retirement.
retirement.
Yeah, and
Because
that-
we're
and
part of the
that's-
VRS system.
And that's one of the issues raised by local governments, is this a reach from the authority? They're now, in some manner, establishing what we pay our employees. It's the first time, according to some of the things I've read, that the state has delved into that, so that's another concern that's been raised.
It's all in a matter to balance an unfunded budget. That's exactly what it is. It's all budget. And so they're reaching into every pocket to try to balance the state's budget.
It's a bigger issue than that. We have unfunded liabilities where we are promising future benefits that we cannot pay. When we
Based
have,
on what's in the pot right now.
based on what's in the pot right now.
Right.
We're telling people we're going to give you X% of your pay when you retire, but we're not putting the money aside today to give you that money. And now, and everybody's been counting on the stock market and other investments to bring it up, and now we're not getting those, and so now we're behind the 8 ball, and we're having to try to make up the difference, and it's coming back to us as and it's at the federal level, it's at the state level, it's in business all the way across the board.
That's why I would urge that the people, and I would hope that our council will get to the point where we can start keeping more tap. I know you can go online and check a bill, but if one of us finds that there's a bill coming down the pipe or being introduced, we need to put pressure on our state legislators to represent what's in our best interest, because I don't know if anyone has called them to say, we as a municipality, we do not approve of this, and we will hold you accountable if you vote for this. You know, we've got to hold these...
You have to have somebody to monitor that. Bigger cities have legislative liaisons
and
that do
lobbyists.
nothing in the world but monitor that, and we do not have that.
Yeah. We got to keep up with this.
They didn't even know about this.
Yeah, they sneak stuff in at the last minute.
One of the largest counties in the state, completely taken off guard by it. But, again, that's why we're members of the League for Smaller Municipalities. That really helps out. But, now's our opportunity to voice concern. Of course, we're not authorized to do that without the council concurrence, and that's why it's before you tonight. Because this just happened, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, we've just given it to you.
Unless I overlook it, there, the only problem I have with the Suffolk letter is they don't ask the governor for a time frame to get back with them.
I think
And
he
that
has
can make it tough on the budgeting.
By statute, I think he has a time frame he has to either sign off or it goes on without his signature.
All right.
So that's established, as I
think
understand.
the
And you'll have plenty of time for budgeting purposes.
No.
One way
April
or another.
18th is a veto session.
Okay.
And it either gets vetoed, amended, or passed.
Right.
Mr. Martin, would it be asking too much if the city manager, when particular issues like this come up, even if we're caught short, you can notify us as to how our legislators, being the 4 two delegates and two senators that represent us, how they vote on these issues, so in turn, we can inform our citizens so they can do something when it comes election time.
Sure.
If these people continue to vote against us.
I can make you aware of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the VRS issue. The next is the health issue, the health plan.
Yes, and before you is our annual renewal, and Ms. Carolyn, is she here? She's hiding back there. Do have Ms. Carolyn Joyner, our HR manager, here to help me answer any technical questions, but we have received the renewal proposal from our employee health insurance plan, and this is a good piece of good news so far in the budget cycle, that for the first time in a while, the city will see a decrease in its premium cost to the tune of 5.9% this year. So we're reporting that to the city council, and you'll see in her memo the schedule that we have if we get the council's authorization to proceed with the renewal with this reduced rate. We will put that before the employees during the annual meetings, and they can sign up for their various issues related to benefits. And we'll be glad to answer any questions or...
No action is required on our part, is it?
Yes, we
approve
will...
the rate?
To accept the proposed plan for the coming fiscal year,
Is this a state,
or agreement, is it?
state plan?
Yes, it's the same plan we're under previously.
I would just make a recommendation that we adopt the new rates, but that we inform the employees that we're going to pass along the rate increase, recognizing that there's some bad years that could come where the rate decrease, We're going to pass that along, but recognizing that there are times when rate increases come that have to be passed on as well.
Yep.
Let's
And-
enjoy the good time, rather than bank the difference.
Yeah, and the city has done that in the past, had to share cost.
So that depends on whether we go with this plan or any other plan. We're gonna pass it through.
This is the plan. And
I know, for
they're-
this year.
Yeah. But there are two options. You've got two or three different options within the plan.
Right, I'm talking about the provider.
Yeah, the provider's the same. This-
I understand
Yeah.
that, but if we decide to change,
We'd have to go out for an RFP and go through all of that.
I understand that. I'm talking about passing on the increases and decreases. Is that just a policy that this council is adopting?
As I understand that, typically, that's an annual decision that the
Yeah.
council would make on
It's just
the...
the rate.
It usually is, but
Yeah.
the mayor preferenced it. He set a precedent if we're gonna adopt a plan,
Oh,
to pass on the increase.
I was just making an editorial comment that we can enjoy a rate reduction now, but when rate increases come in the future, they may have to be picked up, because
May have. to.
May have.
we have a percentage that we pay, and then the balance is adjustable.
So couldn't you put that, or would it be needed to put that in a formal motion to ensure
No.
that this reduction is passed on to the employees now?
No.
It's
Well, I think
Automatically.
that's what I think we're
It's
asking.
automatically.
We do. No, I mean, we need a motion to adopt the...
Currently it's set
Yeah.
on a percentage, and that percentage is not changing, correct, Carol? Yeah, the council previously set the policy on the percentage that the employees share, and that's not being recommended for alteration. As pointed out by the vice mayor, that's an annual process, so each year you would have the opportunity to revisit that.
But the process is now that at this meeting, we generally approve the rates for the coming year.
Yeah.
But it's only for 1 year.
That's
We
right.
adopt the rates. And this year, fortunately, is a minor reduction.
But we will make a motion to,
I'm going to entertain one right now.
okay.
Question?
We're making lots of decisions, we haven't seen our budget yet. We're about a little bit behind in the electric utility, as we've talked about. We're gonna have a 19% increase in the VRS, and we're making decisions. I don't have a problem with accepting the plan. I don't know when the plan goes into effect as far as the new rates. I'm sorry?
April 1.
The rates go in effect April 1?
July 1.
July when you have to notify.
Notify them.
Well, but what I'm saying is, we're making two decisions tonight. One, we need to make tonight. One, we don't really need to make tonight, and it could be impacted on the budget. The one is to let Latham know that we're going to participate. There's no question about that.
At these rates. The rate sharing is the one that you're talking about we would make later.
Yes.
We have to fill out a form to send an answer to let
Yeah.
them know what the city, city's gonna pay, what the employee's gonna pay, the different, insurance rate. And we have to send that off by April 2nd. It has to be just normally by April 2nd. And I have to do open enrollment between April 15th and May 15th.
And the employees have to elect which plan they're going to participate in, so they have to know the rates now to do that.
We've always had stores and insurance out for the budget is approved.
Yeah.
I just have some issues with some of the, but I think we need to do it, we're up against the gun, we've got to do it, but I think we need to have a discussion in this budget cycle, which would be effective for the next budget cycle, but I hadn't really thought the thing through, and I'm kind of talking off the cuff, and that's when I get myself in trouble, but I have a problem when you have, that we're sharing in the family plan, because ours is, we're responsible for the employee, and that's treating a single employee different than you're treating a married employee by taking and paying a part of the family coverage. And so, we're picking up a lot of costs for folks that are married and have families, and I know it's a great benefit, but when we're struggling with trying to make our budget, I'd like for us to look at these rates, but I understand we can't do it for this year, but maybe we have the discussion during the budget cycle, so we're ready next April.
Yes,
That's a policy decision.
that would be my
individually.
recommendation.
That's
Right.
just what copay you want to pay.
Right, it's that, and in our firm this year, we've also gone, all the old guys, that's four of us, have gone to the health savings account plan, and have cut our premiums in half by doing so. Now, we're putting the extra money into the savings account to be used, but even that has a cap, which the mayor knows more about it than I do.
Well, those are
but-
things I think we can look at going
But
forward.
I think those are some things we need to look at.
Yeah, but you'd have to do it at least a year in advance.
That's right.
Of course.
And we
That's what I'm
probably
saying, we
need to
need to
have
look
that
at it
discussion
now
in
for
fall
next year.
as to what we want to do.
Mr. Mayor, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I know we're in tight times with the budget and so forth, so say we go ahead and approve this, and my question is, what happens if this cost overshoots budget when passed? And say this happens, where do we make up the additional funds?
What overshoots what?
When we budget this money, if we don't have enough in there, where are you gonna make up the difference from?
We have to have enough in there, because we've
But
agreed
how do you
to-
know you are if you're gonna approve before?
Well, this
Because
would,
you have to budget around it. This becomes a fixed item in our budget.
and this would be the numbers that the insurance companies guarantee will be for this year. They can't change them either, so
Well, you know, I'm gonna give you a good example. I got a supplement policy that started off like $305, and it shot up to $330. Anyway, it went, this past month, increased like $65. So I
But
called
this is
Anthem-
locked in for
but-
12 months.
Yeah, so I called Anthem Blue
Okay, but
Cross.
that's really not on the subject.
Yeah, but it's food for thought. They told me that they have other policies that, I got locked in on the old policy, they got other policies, new policies to give you the same benefits for a whole lot less premiums per month. So I don't know if we can follow something like that, I don't know.
This is reviewed every year by the Anthem, and it's a statewide plan.
Mhm.
And then our rates are based on our census, but
Yeah, and we're one of the few in the region, maybe in the whole state, that got a
We got a
reduction,
refund.
because we had good experience, obviously, this past year.
Which brings me to one of my concerns. At what point do we look at realistically how much we get to utilize the services of the insurance company? Example, so that regular people might understand what I'm saying. You might have your auto insurance for 10 years.
stay on the health insurance.
Well, I'm just saying so that somebody might understand.
Let's confine it to the health, please.
I'm talking about the health insurance. I'm just giving you an example that is clearer to understand.
example. Let's use a health example. if you can.
Okay, you have health insurance on your automobile, and you don't use it over 10 years. My point is, do we ever evaluate what our expense has been versus what we've actually collected to
Yeah.
look at when?
This is a group insurance policy where all people are lumped under one group.
The city employees,
If I use-
correctly?
Yes.
Correct?
If I use zero, I pay the same as somebody that spends $200,000.
Exactly.
Doesn't cost me any
So
more,
I'm
any
just
less.
saying, do we ever evaluate how much our city employees collect off of the
Yes.
programs that we're in?
We have a
When?
loss ratio that is generated for us every year on our group.
And
And
that's,
that's what they use to generate the rate structure.
and that's why our rates went down this year. Our
'Cause we don't use it
experience
much.
Was good this year, but the last couple of years it's gone up,
Mhm.
so.
Because,
That's a part of the valuation.
Right.
That's how you determine the rate for the coming year.
Right, and this will be fixed for the budget system, and answer to Mr. Blythe, the registration closes, I think you said May 15th,
Right.
so we'll have all that information and who's on what for the budget, so it'll all be tied.
And the number will change based on who enrolls or de-enrolls,
Right.
or re-enrolls, because it now becomes a little
Right,
better deal.
But the rates can't change for
The
a
rates
year.
can't change, but the whole dollar, the
But the
whole
cost
apple will
amount
be in
to
the
the
budget.
city could be.
Right.
Yep.
Some city employees could be on their spouse's coverage,
mhm.
and they don't enroll.
Right. So they have the employees have options whether to get in or not get in.
Yes.
So,
And
the-
there's options within options, there's a less expensive version, but it has lesser benefit, less cost to them. That's going to Councilman Burgess's point. They're sharing in the cost now, and that's something this body should look at periodically, is that cost share adequate to meet the city's needs and employees, or does it need to be adjusted?
and maybe I missed it, but what portion of the percentage is the city contributing to the plans?
I believe it's 80-20, is that right, Carolyn? Yeah, 80-20.
We pay 80 and the employee pays 20.
Yeah, and I don't know how many years the city's had the employees participating, but that's a relatively new phenomena, if you will, in local government across the states and country, is getting the employees to participate in the cost.
What happened was, we used to pay 100% of the city employees' cost, and it got to the point a number of years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, that it became prohibitive, and so we capped the amount that the city would pay at 80%, so that as it all went up, our share would only go up proportionally, not dramatically, on employee only. And so we shifted to 80-20 copay back, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago?
And one of the motivations is if you have employees who don't really need it, like they have a spouse with family coverage, then they don't take it. If it's no cost to them, they might take it anyway, and the city would be paying full cost for more people.
Right, so if an employee doesn't take it, do we still have to come up with, they give us our group rate, it's not gonna affect us, we're still gonna have to pay the same amount
No, the rate is the same, but the participation, you don't pay for someone who's not
who's not
employed.
participating?
No.
That
And
lowers
I
your
think
cost.
by evaluation, if you've got employees, and it would also help them make a consideration of how, do we give them the option of getting their outside insurance that has nothing to do with us, and then they can keep a portion of that money in their check, and we don't have to match it?
We don't have that.
Hold on, we got heads
They
going up and
they
down.
don't have to take the service. They don't have.
But we do
They
not
don't
give
get
them
the
the
money.
money.
They don't get cash.
And the employee lost, because no one is there to share that cost with them. It's financially beneficial for an employee if they're gonna have health coverage to do it with the city.
But if they elect not to take the coverage, then we don't pay, nor do they.
They don't pay, but they can, see, because I'm thinking like this, and this may be outside the box, but I'm thinking if it is costing us X number of dollars for this 80% that we are paying, say it's costing us $80, if the employee can find other insurance, or he opts out of it, that's his choice, and we can give him $30 extra in his paycheck instead of us spending $80, then give him his $30 and let him get his own insurance the way he wants to get it. But this way, we don't have to spend, as the city, we don't have to spend the whole $80. Let the man have It's cheaper for us to give them $30 pay rate increase than for us to pay the $80.
It may be in the short run, and without getting too detailed, but the problem with that scenario, because some places have looked at that, is if all of your healthy young employees, no offense to those of us that aren't in that category, but if all your healthy young employees opt out and go get a very cheap plan, then who are you going to have left? And you're going to pay a premium to try to cover the rest
Then
of
the
the
insurance
staff.
companies is gonna jack up the price on the older
Oh,
people
yeah.
so they can
No,
still
they're
get
just
their
gonna do it
money.
based on experience.
Yeah, because your experience is then going to go out of the roof, and you're going to
And-
pay a much higher
and
premium.
spread
So
over
Typically,
fewer
the
number of
premiums go up every 5 years anyway. I mean, if you're 55, 60, 65, it goes up. Big jumps at that point in time.
Now there are some entities that look at cafeteria plans where you can pick and choose your benefits, and that's a viable option for the future, I think, for local government, but at this point, we're not quite there because of the packages that are typically available to us, but that may be the wave of the future.
May I have a motion to adopt the rates for the health plan for the city for the next year?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And aye, motion carries. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a request to use the council chambers for city council,
Yeah, this is under manager's report, Mr. Mayor.
yes, sir.
I have received a request to use the council chamber for a city council candidate debate. I've confirmed that the chambers can be made available for broadcasting of the debate as long as the scheduled date is acceptable. And my provision was that there be no cost to the city, because there is a small cost involved for the person that operates the equipment, who's a contractual, not a city salaried employee. The voter registrar has been asked to moderate and ask the questions for the debate. I'm advised that the questions would be accepted from citizens who attend the debate, and the candidate's participation would be voluntary. The registrar was here earlier, I think she's still here, if you have any questions or she has any further comments or clarification on her participation. But at this point, I just wanted to make the board aware. I do not believe, in my opinion, that this requires any action of the city council, but I did want to make you aware that this was an effort to try to provide the use of the facility and the equipment to have as many people participate and become knowledgeable of the electoral process in the city as possible. But it would be up to the candidates and the manner in which it was conducted and how many participate and when this event would occur. I don't know if you want to add anything. Okay, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you.
When will determination be made as to whether, what date this would be, and when will we be advertising it or would we be advertising it on the PEG channel?
I'd be glad to if once a decision's made on when it would be held by the candidates.
By the candidates?
May I ask a question?
You may.
This is a private function or what function is it? Because
It would need to
that would
be,
depend on whether it could be put on the page.
that's right, it needs to be a sponsoring entity rather than an individual. And that's what I had relayed when the request was made. Someone would have to be responsible and accountable for the use of the facility, and typically that would be something other than a for-profit or individual, if that answers your question. I'm just making the board aware that I've had the request, and I'm agreeable to authorize it without the city council's objecting to that action, as long as some bona fide entity will plan and organize the effort. And I'm satisfied that the registrar's involvement would ensure that it not be a biased event in any way.
Would you define bona fide?
Good question. My take on that would be any existing nonprofit or organization that would agree to, if you will, sponsor the activity and allow it to be held. Is that the decent? I want to leave it open because I don't know who might be interested, but,
What would a sponsor provide?
it's basically just accountability for the fee to pay not employee, but the contracted services to operate the equipment, and I have the hourly rate for that. And a date that would be acceptable for the reserving the facility, and a moderator or someone in responsible charge that would handle the event.
Well, it's my understanding that the voter registrator has agreed to moderate.
And that would be satisfactory in my opinion.
And as being one of the candidates that would be willing to participate, I would think that we could address the next hurdle by who will pay the fee to the private contractor, either divided amongst the candidates who wish to participate, which the fee is it minimal?
Yes, it's in the $40-some an hour range.
So 2 hours, you got about $80-some divided amongst potentially 7 candidates participating. You're talking about $11, $12 per person, and we can pay for that. So that's not a big deal. So is there any other provisions that would be considered?
I mean, I don't think this is an appropriate discussion for city council. But city manager said it didn't take any action. We don't need to discuss it. They can get together, they can work out the details. It doesn't affect the rest of us.
Correct.
Well, the only reason I'm discussing it is because this is very important to the citizens. I think it's an excellent opportunity for the citizens to be exposed to all of the candidates. You happen to be running unopposed, but there are other offices that aren't, and the citizens deserve the most effective opportunity to be informed.
Mr. McLemore, approval to use a facility has been granted. A cost has been established. If the debate is to be held, or the forum, whatever it's to be called, it needs to be done among the candidates, not the city council. The city council has no jurisdiction or authority to pursue for this. It needs to be done outside of the city council.
Well, I understand, but consider
Okay.
for the people in the race
It's
are
just
up
not-
here, why wouldn't we discuss it? It's brand new.
Well, it's
So-
just not a city council matter. It's a candidate matter.
No
And
problem.
if we can arrange to have someone put it together, I think what Mr. Martin was suggesting is someone or some organization needs to put it together. Ms. Maynard has agreed to ask questions only.
I agree.
And that's all she's agreed to do, is to ask the questions and to moderate the event, but not to put it together or sponsor it or organize it. So someone's
But
gotta
she
put it
could
together.
do that if she wanted to.
She has not agreed to that. She's
Would-
agreed to answer the question, to ask the questions only.
It's my opinion that by not discussing it, there are people who don't want to see it happen.
Well, I think if you want to get the candidates together to discuss it, I think that's appropriate. I think that outside a council meeting, I don't think it's a council.
Would that be a legal meeting, Mr. Taylor, if the candidates got together? You see?
You're not conducting city business, so I would say no, it's not going to be a council meeting. I would suggest this: you've got 4 interested parties. Because you have 4 interested parties, some could claim that there is a conflict of interest for you to participate. And so if the 4 of you participate in a discussion at the council level, then you have a problem because you are then only have 3 people left, and you don't have a quorum to take any action.
No actions.
There's not an actionable item, it's just an agreement to do or not.
I'm just trying to reinforce the fact that it's not a city council thing. It needs to be discussed outside of council.
Okay. We've gotten a report from the city manager. You've gotten an acceptance by the registrar to ask the questions. And outside of that, it needs to be handled outside the meeting. Okay. Departmental reports?
They're available unless you have questions or comments, so they're there for
Anyone
your
have any
information.
questions of any department? There are no reports for tonight?
Nothing other than the written ones that have been submitted.
Okay.
Is this our boards, our
Boards.
commissions, our
Okay.
boards?
Boards and commission reports?
Are there any?
Yeah,
I got
we-
5 of them.
I'll go first, mine's short. We had an incubator board meeting, 3 weeks ago. We're continuing to move forward on trying to get the fourth floor. We finished the construction. We're trying to get that built out and filled up. And we're tackling some issues on collections and graduation and things like that. And we're real pleased with how we're going, but we still got some work ahead of us. And we have a new board member from Southampton County. One of the board members is a representative from Southampton County Board of Supervisors. And we have Barry Porter that's now serving with us. We're real glad to have him on board, and he seems to be real enthused about being there. And our city manager was at the last board meeting, and that was real good. So I think, all in all, we're moving forward in the right direction.
Okay, very good. Any other report? Barry?
Okay, we'll start off with the regional waste. We met on March the 6th. All 3 communities had the appointed representatives in attendance. The 2 subcommittees reported. The 1 subcommittee was tasked with investigating alternatives to SIPSA in the future when SIPSA is no longer around. They went out and visited 2 landfills, both of which would be able to handle it. They both were cheaper than SIPSA, but keep in mind, SIPSA right now has got the debt, and they are tasked with making sure that what they collect covers all the expenses. And then we all know how that SIPS has been working. One of the big issues they came up with was how to get transfer stations and how to utilize the transfer stations. The other committee looked into was what we call a legal committee, subcommittee. They looked and they found out that at this point, because there's already an authority in the state on garbage, the 3 cannot get together and call themselves an authority. However, we can start and be looking at individually, collectively looking at the alternatives and getting bids in when it gets a little closer to the time.
Question. Does that mean that we could look at a joint contract? Is that within the
Yeah,
legalities?
there's a way of doing a joint contract, yes.
So we could accomplish something similar without being, a quote, an authority?
Without being an authority, correct. The problem with SIPSA is that SIPSA is always going to be, it's ongoing. I don't think there's ever an end to SIPSA as we know it, only an end to our support and use agreements.
Which I wanted to ask you another question about that real quick.
Okay, if I can answer it. If not, I got my SIPSA going.
Yeah. Is there an ongoing cost to us after 2018?
Not of support and use.
What's that?
Not of, as far as our support and use. That will be, could be over.
How about closure and those kinds of...
Closure and those types of things we talked about. We could be on the hook for the closure.
Although they're supposed to be
SIPSA is
reserving
trying to
for
put
that,
away
aren't they?
reserve money now that they're projecting, and that's the key word, I think, of what the closure is going to cost. We had a big discussion about that up in that meeting, and there's 2 ends of a spectrum here. Okay. But they are to be putting money away for the closure.
But that topic's on your agenda for sure?
Of course it is.
Okay,
Of
good.
course it is.
Okay.
That's on the agenda, as well as, do we stay in SIPSA not as a support and use, but as a member, voting member. So all that's still on the table. But we looked at that. Now, the next step that we've looked at is that we've got the localities. The one that's doing the alternatives is going to chart it out with the cost and try to get it all put together. Our big problem is SIPSA gives us a maybe number, and these other 2 guys have got, this is what we believe it'll be number, and not as much of a maybe. But we're going to chart it out and see what is our biggest bang for the buck. Basically is what it boils down to.
Question, please. When you said alternatives, who were you talking about?
The 2 alternatives?
Yes.
Well, we've only looked at 2. Now, there could be more. We looked at waste management. I'll tell you exactly where they are. Waste Management's got a landfill over in Wakefield, and we looked at Republic Services, it's got one over in Brunswick, but there's other ones that we can look at. These are just 2 that the committee just wrote out and looked at.
Okay, has SIPSA, well, I don't think SIPSA would want it because it wouldn't necessarily be profitable for them. But as a member of our committee, is this the committee that you're basically kind of trying to get things together for us?
For the regional, right.
Okay. Has anybody considered, there are companies, and I don't have the presentation with me, but I was given a presentation from a company that will literally come in and pay us for our trash, and they will provide the equipment here if we will provide them land that they will lease from us for their equipment, and they will actually pay us for our trash. They turn it into biofuel and sell it.
We're looking at all of that, and one of the companies that we talked to, both these companies we talked with deal with that. So
Waste Management
with Waste Management and the other one. So they all deal with that. It's just a matter of us getting it, and that's what the next step is to look at everything side by side and get what's the best bang for our buck. There's as many people up here has got fingers on their hands. You count them all, that's how many alternatives there are out there. So we're looking at that. Our next meeting will be in June, because three of the people on there, counting Mr. Martin, feel like their budgets are very important for this next cycle. And again, now the legislative or the legal subcommittee is going to be looking at what can we do to protect ourselves in SIPSA is our next step. And that means any assets that might be there or anything else. We need to look at that and say, this is the steps that we need to take for our protection.
Question.
Yes.
Are you planning to give a date of 2014? A recommendation?
I think we're pretty much going to have to, yeah.
Okay.
My question is, do we have to, this is a two-pronged question. One, I guess, for the council, and the other is for Mr. Cheatham. Would we be in a position before 2014 to entertain some of these other alternatives that offer that service, where they could, if we wanted to tomorrow, could we call up and strike a deal to let a company come in here and buy our trash from us and stop charging necessarily our citizens
No, you still
the
have to pay
$43?
SIPSA, so you're going to cost the citizens.
Because of the contract, correct?
Because of the support use
Contract.
agreement, and I know you'll say, oh, gee, we can always take that to
Okay,
court.
which I was going to go to, thank you.
But
You
it's
answered.
been tried
You-
twice,
you-
right?
I know about Chesapeake. What's the other city that tried?
Smithfield wanted to take it. And
Did they take it to court?
Smithfield was told, don't do it,
By who?
by their attorneys.
By the attorney. Now, my question is to our attorney. I've said this once before. Is there anything preventing us for asking for relief from this contract from a judge and jury? Now,
You'd have to file a lawsuit.
and if we filed a lawsuit, how much would it cost us to file the lawsuit?
You'd have to have, well, let me put it this way. It cost Chesapeake over $1 million to pursue it with a lawsuit, and they got nowhere. The case was dismissed. I don't have any way of estimating for you what it might cost the city of Franklin to file a lawsuit. Obviously, we wouldn't try to proceed along the same track that Chesapeake chose. This is something that I've been involved with the entire 4 years that I've been city attorney, and I have not seen that there is a clear path to some resolution. I'm just one of 8 communities that are all upset at the high cost of the SIPSA charges, and so it's everybody looking at it, and so far no one has found a successful way to challenge the contracts.
So, am I correct in understanding you've been looking at this for 4 years, but you can't tell us what it would cost us to file a lawsuit?
That's correct.
Thank you.
What the legal cost would be. But the other side of that coin is something that the mayor brought up, closure. Even if we won, we're going to still be responsible for certain extra costs like closure, et cetera.
That depends on the judge and the jury.
I'll be willing, I'm telling you, we'll be
That's-
full part of it.
that's
We've
speculation.
we've gone over this same ground at least 5 times,
Thank you.
the same conclusion. We've we've mentioned Chesapeake every time there's been a
Yes.
lawsuit that has not been won. They've lost and they've spent millions doing it. I just think we're wasting time talking about the same thing every time.
I agree, that's why I brought up what I had earlier.
And the reason, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Once you come up with a recommendation, do we have to RFP, or can we do like Mr. McLemore suggested and just call up a company?
No, it's gonna, if we have to go through the normal
We have to
procurement
RFP.
process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, we gotta put it out as normal procurement.
Soliciting contracts, that's, so that regular people understand, that means we put it out there and try to get the lowest bid. We can select from the lowest bid who,
That is correct.
chooses to,
Lowest
for,
bid,
for,
yes, sir.
for other people to understand what we're talking about, the procurement
Okay.
process.
Okay.
However,
Thank you for the clarity.
you did mention that we've Chesapeake several times, but I am of the strong opinion, unless our attorney does come back to us with some sort of a figure that it would cost us, we certainly will not do anything to pursue it. And because Chesapeake lost, they're a city of 100,000 people, I believe that we might find compassion from a judge and jury that will release us for this contract, considering we're paying the highest trash rates in the nation. But if we don't try, we definitely will not get relief for our citizens.
Mr. Chief?
I'd like to comment too.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Johnson?
I'll get the other four.
Okay. If we initiate a lawsuit, we have to be prepared to pay whatever the judgment is, as far as how much it's gonna cost us. And we don't have that money available, correct?
On the budget.
How do we know what the judgment would be to say we don't have it available?
But we're taking a chance with, because once it's rendered, we have to do it.
Well,
Once we're
I don't
in
know
it,
that there'll
we
be a
have to-
judgment against us.
Exactly.
Legal cost.
Be legal
Mr.
costs.
McLemore, I know you've asked this, but you've asked it every single time.
and I never get an answer.
You've gotten the same answer every
No,
time.
that Chesapeake tried it, they
failed.
spent $1 million, and...
Correct.
So do
And
you
it-
want us to do that too? And I'm saying that I don't believe, first of all, I'd like to know what...
Okay, we put it to a decision, we've decided as a council, we're not doing that.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Berger.
Well, my only comment was, yeah, it sounds great to want to try to get out of the trash, but are the citizens willing to pick up a $3 or $4, not even $1 million, $300,000 or $500,000 legal bill and divide that by the 8,000 households we got and see what their trash rate goes to, and then ask them if they want us to go forward? And I think most of them are going to say, I don't want to go from, what is it, $40
A month?
60,
$100
$100 a month to...
yeah.
To
Okay,
200, that's my...
It's not only the legal cost, it's the additional cost it would cost. We would have to pay the $43 regardless.
If we lost,
If we
I agree,
we have to
if we
pay
lost,
$43.
however, as far as you saying, do the citizens want to pay that extra money? How will we know what extra money there is when our attorney can't tell us what it would cost us to file the lawsuit? And then we are paying an attorney in salary and benefits something like $8,000 a month, so why can't he file a lawsuit? Why we got to spend $300,000? So how come he can't come back and tell us, for us to file this lawsuit, this is what the charges are? So we can make a decision if we want to invest in pursuing it.
Is that fee a constant, or does, once you get into it?
Probably
does
by
it
the
change?
hour.
By the hour.
Oh, you guess it, you guess it.
It's
You
$500
don't know.
it's $500 or $600 an hour to get an
For
appropriate...
who?
For
The
the
judge?
appropriate attorney. No,
An
you don't pay a
appropriate
judge.
attorney?
Yes, to defend us and to represent.
Why can
You want-
our city attorney
You wanna win?
defend us?
I mean, he doesn't have the technical expertise, and I don't mean to be stepping on the attorney. He doesn't have the technical expertise to take on a battery of attorneys from SIPSA.
I'm not saying that he necessarily does, but I took on a battery of people in Richmond and won, and I don't have no degree.
Okay, we put this on the...
Can we move on to the next
We put,
committee? This is getting ridiculous.
Of
course it's
please
ridiculous.
continue.
It's getting ridiculous.
Of
Please
course, it's
continue.
ridiculous.
Okay, the next committee was the Hampton Roads Partnership. The biggest thing that took place there is that Hampton Roads has been downgraded on its homeland security, where we were getting millions of dollars in grants. No one can quite figure out why that happened, why the federal government did that. I think the general consensus, well, but they didn't do other ones. The general consensus was that the military can take care of their own, is what I got from the meeting, and I guess they need to look around. but they're going to appeal this, but it wouldn't happen in this budget cycle. But this is money that we got in, it's
What
been strictly
organization?
on the Homeland Security.
What organization?
Hampton Roads Planning.
Planning.
Mhm.
I thought you said partnership.
I'm sorry.
Okay, planning district. Got it.
The next committee was the regional jail. In the regional jail, the next meeting, which is April 11th, we're going to be looking at a maintenance contract. I know Suffolk and Isle of Wight is planning on having their public works man there, one of them, in order to help listen to the contract and listen to the technical talk they're doing. And I would ask Mr. Martin if he could please have one of ours there as well at that meeting so that they can maybe interpret the lingo. Hello?
He's writing.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
All right.
Thank you.
The next one was the Business Friendly, and Business Friendly had a meeting last Wednesday night. We met with the DFA about the farmers market. We had a good meeting, I think. Appreciate Ms. Rickman coming and helping out with this. We talked with Dan Howe and partners in the farmers market about ways to help improve that. Some of the guys that are coming in, they just feel like it's way too much paperwork, so Ms. Rickman and Mr. Howe are going to get together and try to streamline that paperwork. Ms. Rickman's office is going to help these guys fill it out because there's some new sales tax laws, et cetera, that may help some of the agricultural suppliers there. And see if we can get that moving along a little bit better and up and running a little stronger by working together on it. And I think it was a good meeting. That was the bulk of that meeting.
Comment about business friendly?
Yes,
I think it
please.
would help if we do some type of report on your progress so that citizens and businesses will know what you have done.
We're working currently now on an article. We've got the basics of it ready that we are planning on putting into the paper. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, the next one was senior services, and we had the meeting, it was the executive board meeting, and really we talked about, I gotta read it here, about, believe it or not, we talked about benefits there as well, and the benefits that they pay their part-timers, and it's still a need of investigation as to what would be the norm for that. But that was the crux of that meeting. Once again, they're getting ready to look at all that. We talked a few minutes about IROD, but only that he was going to be coming back to make the presentation that we had talked about at the last meeting here. And finally, I want to put a plug in for robotics. Their day is coming up. What the day of the event?
May 12th,
May 12th or 13th. It's that Saturday.
that's Saturday.
They're going to have the regatta again, so everybody can build their cardboard boat, watch a couple people fall in the river.
Is that the 12th and 13th?
It's one of the days. It's on Saturday.
But I mean,
Saturday,
that's the robotics thing.
That's
That's the
robotics.
fun.
12th, it's the 12th.
Right, the 12th, okay, thank you. And they're just trying to raise some money and try to get things going and awareness as to what they're doing. And went to the one last year. It's going to be their annual event, and I had a lot of fun because one of the guys, he won the Titanic Award. He didn't even make it away from the dock before he went down. Most of them made it pretty well. I would like to see Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Pacey build a boat and see if either one of them could beat some of these kids, but I don't think that's going to happen. And the fire department. But anyway, those are the reports and just an update. Oh, and that the competition happens down at Barrett's Landing, so just to let you know where it is.
Any other reports? I have one. Mr. McElmore?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'll finish up.
I just wanted to report on the ward meeting that we had on Thursday at the Workforce Development Center. We had an opportunity to meet with a lot of the citizens from the community, and I would like to thank those citizens who took their time to come out and
Mr.
participate.
Mayor, that's not a council's report.
That really is the Board of Commission report.
Well,
Last Friday, I went to the Mayors and Chairs Caucus for Hampton Road over in Suffolk, and the big two issues that were discussed there, Secretary Terry Suits of the Secretary for Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security was there to talk about the tolls and to talk about the BRAC coming up. They're preparing for BRAC Commission to come up, and whether or not we have another BRAC in Tidewater, or whether or not they're going to come under the radar and try to do it like they did last year and close bases is a big unknown at this point. But there was a great big plug for the Military Alliance Group that retired Admiral Quigley represents, to represent Tidewater with the military affairs people to know what's in the offing for closures and consolidations. The concerns are about moving major military pieces away from Tidewater, consolidating in either other parts of the country, even consolidating here. They're doing research on the strengths to attract as well as defense mechanisms to keep from losing military from here. The transfer of a carrier would be 6,000 people, and probably a $500 million net effect on the area. The other discussion that was in great detail was a transportation issue. Everyone is upset about the tolls, but it seemed because of the referendum that failed a few years ago that the citizens refused a tax, so now they're left with the results of there's no other option. No one likes the tolls, but they also know that they've got to have tunnels in order to keep Hampton Roads viable. There's an effort to go forward to try to find a way to address long-term need. People in the western part of the state don't understand or believe that Tidewater is the gateway from the world to the state of Virginia as far as imports is concerned, and that really fuels the economy across the state. Having said that, they have authorized that each of the mayors and chairs for the Hampton Roads Caucus sign a letter to the Richmond and Northern Virginia delegation, which make up what we call the Golden Crescent, to try to bring pressure on the General Assembly to address the transportation needs of all of Virginia, especially those three jurisdictions, and set up a meeting or a big meeting, a summit, with those three localities to try to really start addressing transportation, which is in desperate need. There's not enough money to maintain the facilities, let alone build new. I'll let you know as that develops. But those are the two big things that Tidewater is the most concerned about going forward. So, and they're huge issues. It could have impacts on all of our localities.
I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that Mr. Martin made it to the Business Friendly, which he's a member of, as well as to the Hampton Roads Planning Center. Got introduced there and was an integral part in both meetings.
Is there any other business come before the council before we go into closed session? If not, may I have a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Mayor.
And to edit that to exclude just the board appointments is the only thing.
Boards and commissions is all you need.
I'll let Mr. Blind do it. He's got his open.
Okay. Just down to that first part of boards and commissions, Don.
The board's
And then finish up with the section of code.
Oh, okay. I move that the Franklin City Council meet in closed session to consider appointments to boards and commissions, to discuss and consider the disposition of...
No,
That's
leave that
all.
out.
Stop that.
Skip down.
Just a code now.
Pursuant to at the very bottom line.
Okay. Code section 2.2-3711A1, 3, and 5.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And aye. Motion carries. Thank you all for coming.
Sorry, I had already cut my computer down, forgot about that.
Well, you needed to do it. You needed to do it.
Huh?